The sun was barely rising over Brooksville. The streets were quiet, filled with that early morning calm where nothing seems out of place. People walked their dogs, a few cars rolled out of driveways, and a gentle breeze brushed against the leaves. It was one of those peaceful mornings where no one expects anything dramatic to happen. Grace Miller locked her apartment door and started walking toward her car parked across the street. She was dressed in a deep blue suit, carrying a thick folder filled with case files. Today was important, a disciplinary hearing involving a police officer accused of misconduct. She wanted to reach court early. She had no idea that in less than 5 minutes, the very system she served would turn on her. As she crossed the street, something unusual caught her attention. A patrol car speeding from the far end of the block. The tires screeched as it halted right beside her. Neighbors looked up, startled. Officer Daniel Clark stepped out quickly, adrenaline rushing through him. He had received a report about a stolen black sedan with a broken left tail light, exactly like the one Grace owned. The moment Daniel saw Grace near the car, he didn't think twice. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle," he shouted loudly. Grace stopped, confused. "Officer, is everything all right?" Daniel didn't reply. His hand rested on his gun, his voice sharper than before. "I said step back, now." People slowed down on sidewalks. Some pulled out their phones, whispering. Grace calmly raised her hands. "There's a misunderstanding. That's my car." Daniel came closer, his suspicion growing instead of fading. "Keys, show me the keys." Grace reached into her purse and held them up. Daniel snapped, "Drop the bag. Put your hands where I can see them." The scene felt unreal to Grace. She had dealt with hundreds of police officers in her courtroom, but she had never experienced this kind of hostility personally. "Officer, please listen." "Turn around," Daniel barked. "Hands behind your back." Grace's heart pounded as cold metal cuffs tightened around her wrists. She felt the burn of humiliation as strangers stared, unsure whether she was dangerous or a victim. Her voice trembled slightly. "Officer, you're making a mistake." Daniel smirked. "Everyone says that." He opened the back door of the police car and forced her inside. Grace kept her gaze forward, her breathing steady, but her eyes showed the pain of being treated like a criminal. The ride to the station felt longer than it was. Daniel radioed in proudly, "Suspect in custody. Matches the stolen vehicle description." Bringing her in, Grace kept silent. She could have ended this in seconds by revealing her identity, but she wanted to see how far the officer would go. The station, Grace was led into an interrogation room. The metal chair was cold. Her wrists ached from the handcuffs. She watched Daniel pace around the room, acting confident, acting in control. He dropped a file on the table. "Let's start with your name." Grace looked at him calmly. "You already have it." Daniel scoffed. "Lady, don't be clever with me. You're lucky I didn't charge you for resisting." She held his gaze. "And you're unlucky you don't know who you're talking to." "What's that supposed to mean?" he snapped. Grace leaned forward slightly. Her voice remained calm, painfully calm. "In less than 1 hour, you are going to walk into courtroom 4B. Daniel frowned. "What does that have to do with anything?" Grace continued, her eyes locked on him. "And you will stand in front of the bench. And I will be sitting on that bench." Daniel blinked, confused. "You? What are you talking about?" Grace exhaled slowly. "Officer Clark, I am Judge Grace Miller." The room fell absolutely silent. Daniel froze. The confidence drained from his face. His hands slowly dropped to his sides, as though the weight of what he'd done had suddenly crashed over him. Before he could say anything, another officer rushed into the room. "Daniel, you arrested the wrong person. Judge Miller's ID checked out. She's supposed to preside over your internal misconduct hearing today." Daniel's eyes widened. His throat tightened. He took a step back, staring at Grace as if seeing her for the first time. Grace didn't move, didn't blink. She simply said with a steady voice that cut through him, "And now, Officer Clark, your hearing just became far more interesting." The officer beside Daniel whispered, "Man, what did you do?" Daniel had no answer. His entire career, his entire reputation, had just collided with the worst possible truth, and fate had only begun to unfold. Officer Daniel Clark's world had flipped upside down. He was staring at Judge Grace Miller, the same stern figure whose gaze he had often feared in the courtroom, but now, that same authority was focused directly on him, in person, outside the safety of the legal walls. Grace crossed her arms, her voice calm but unyielding. Daniel, what you did this morning. This isn't just a personal mistake. It reflects on the system you serve. Daniel's throat tightened, and he stammered. I was following a report. I didn't know you would be here so early. Grace leaned slightly forward, her eyes locked on him. Daniel, mistakes are human, but accountability is what separates a professional from someone reckless. Today you will face that accountability, and it will be up to you how you handle it. Another officer who had entered the room whispered, She's Judge Miller, sir. This is your chance to own up and show integrity. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his pride and fear clashing. He had faced many defendants, many tense situations, but never had he felt so exposed, so utterly powerless. Grace straightened, her voice slicing through the tension. In less than an hour, you will walk into courtroom 4B. There, every action you take, every word you speak, will be under scrutiny. Justice will not bend for excuses or confusion. It only serves truth. She turned to leave, the sound of her heels echoing sharply against the station floor. Daniel remained frozen, replaying the morning's events in his mind. The handcuffs, the wrongful arrest, the humiliating realization. As Grace walked toward the courthouse, the early morning calm of Brooksville seemed a distant memory. Inside courtroom 4B, she prepared to preside over the disciplinary hearing. Her mind sharp and unwavering, Daniel would arrive any moment, carrying the weight of his mistake. And now, with Grace on the bench, he could not hide behind protocol or position. When Daniel finally entered the courtroom, his eyes met Grace's. He felt every inch of responsibility crash down on him. Grace's voice was steady, professional, yet carried the subtle force of someone who had seen through deception 1,000 times before. Officer Clark, please take your seat. Today, we address actions, intentions, and accountability. The courtroom was silent. Daniel swallowed hard, realizing that his career, and perhaps his conscience, would never be the same. Grace reviewed the case files methodically, her eyes occasionally flicking to Daniel, silently reminding him that no badge, no report, no misunderstanding could protect him from facing the truth. Minutes stretched, words weighed, and decisions loomed. Daniel spoke carefully, owning his mistakes, explaining the confusion, but never once attempting to deflect responsibility. Grace listened intently, her rulings precise, fair, yet firm. By the time the hearing concluded, Daniel had learned the most valuable lesson of his life. Authority is a responsibility, and power without accountability can lead to ruin. Grace adjourned the session, her final words resonating through the courtroom. Let this be a reminder to all of us. Justice demands clarity, integrity, and respect for the law and for those it protects. Let today's lesson guide every step you take. As Daniel left the courtroom, he felt the weight of humility settle over him. Grace watched him go, knowing that sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones learned through personal experience. Brooksville returned to its morning calm. But for both Judge Grace Miller and Officer Daniel Clark, nothing would ever feel the same again. Justice had been served not just by law, but by truth.